Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. When my husband and I bought our little house on Oak Street last year, we thought we had found our perfect forever home. The neighborhood was quiet, the schools were good, and our backyard had plenty of room for our kids to play. For the first few months, it really was everything we had hoped for. That all changed when the house next door sold. The previous owners had been an elderly couple who mostly kept to themselves. We said hello in passing and exchanged the occasional pleasantry, but that was it. Honestly, they were ideal neighbors for a young family like ours. Never noisy or nosy, just peaceful. So when that dreaded for sale sign went up, we were worried about who might move in. Our anxiety only grew when an older woman named Karen purchased the place. Right from the start, she rubbed me the wrong way. The day she moved in, Karen made a beeline for our front door to introduce herself. She seemed friendly enough at first, but it didn't take long for her inner Karen-ness to shine through. Right away, she started judging our landscaping and asking intrusive questions about what my husband did for work. I tried to end the conversation politely, but she followed me to my car asking if she could get my husband's business card for her niece's job search. So awkward. Over the next few weeks, the run-ins with Karen continued. If we were working in the yard, she'd come over uninvited and start telling us what flowers we should plant. If my husband was washing his car, she'd strike up a conversation about her own car and ask to borrow his cleaning supplies. If the kids' toys ended up even an inch onto her lawn, she'd bring them back and lecture us on being more careful. It was excessive. Still, we were trying our best to give her the benefit of the doubt and be good neighbors. That was until the day a construction crew showed up next door. Karen hadn't mentioned anything, so we were completely surprised to see bulldozers plowing up her backyard. My husband went over to ask what was going on. That's when we got the bad news. Karen was having a large detached garage built that would sit right along the property line we shared. Not only that, but the surveyor flag showed it was going to be 5 feet over on our side. When my husband pointed this out, Karen brushed it off, saying there must be a mistake with the property line. According to her, that side yard belonged to her. For the next few days, my husband tried explaining to both Karen and the construction manager that they were encroaching on our property. Karen insisted she was in the right, and even claimed she had been using that land without consequence for years. Completely ridiculous considering she had only lived there for a month. When discussing it calmly didn't work, we had no choice but to call our lawyer. He recommended we get an official survey done immediately to confirm the property line. Of course, the survey proved that piece of land was indeed ours, but Karen refused to accept the results. Our lawyer sent Karen and the construction company formal notices telling them to halt the project. Again, they ignored us and kept right on building. At that point, we had reached our limit. It was time to take legal action whether we wanted to or not. In order to get a court order to stop the construction, we first had to file an injunction. I had never been involved with anything like that before, and the whole process seemed so daunting. We had to gather up all kinds of documents proving our ownership of the land. Then we had to go before a judge, who thankfully granted the temporary injunction on the first try. I'll never forget the look on Karen's face when the sheriff showed up with the court order and told the crew to pack up their equipment. She turned red as a beet and started yelling that we were treating her unfairly. I had to stop myself from laughing when the sheriff explained she was more than welcome to challenge us in court if she thought she was in the right. Over the next few weeks, we all prepared for the ugly court battle ahead. We knew Karen didn't have a legal leg to stand on, but she had proven she would fight tooth and nail anyway. Our lawyer gathered every bit of evidence about that property line he could get his hands on. Meanwhile, we were nervous wrecks, just hoping this would all be over soon. On the big day, we walked into the courtroom ready to defend our case. But there was one problem. Karen was a no-show. Her lawyer stammered some excuse about her being out of town before basically conceding defeat. The judge, of course, ruled fully in our favor and ordered Karen to tear down the partially built garage at her own expense. Justice at last. We were so relieved to have the court case behind us and our property rights upheld. Unfortunately, the nastiness with Karen was far from over. She gave us the silent treatment for weeks, refusing to even acknowledge us if we said hello, and whenever she did have to talk to us, she was cold as ice. Not that I really cared if Karen wanted to be friends. I just wanted a decent neighbor. What I didn't expect was for her vindictiveness to continue. Karen left nasty comments about our yard on the neighborhood Facebook page. She reported us to the Homeowners Association for minor infractions that other neighbors committed too. I even noticed her purposefully throwing trash on our lawn. It was juvenile and pathetic. The pettiness continued like that for months until finally another for sale sign went up next door. Karen's revenge schemes must not have been satisfying enough because she ended up moving away just a year after buying the place. I have to admit, we may have popped a bottle of champagne when that moving truck pulled away for the last time. In the end, we decided to turn Karen's half-built garage into a cute little garden shed to get some use out of the mess she left behind. It feels so satisfying knowing that every time we open that door, we're enjoying something that exists because we stood up to her bullying. This experience definitely tested our patience and taught us to stand firm for what's right. In the end, we got to keep our property and live in peace. As for Karen, she can take her lousy attitude elsewhere. Good riddance. The next one is a pro-revenge story. My husband and I met with the top realtor that a highly popular agency had to offer. We had saved for 2 years and were ready to buy a home. He exuded confidence, encouragement, and made us feel like he could help us achieve our dream home. We went over our financials with him, and he noticed that we both had Tier 1 credit, both scores over 800, and we had enough savings for a conventional loan. He was clearly elated because he could sense that commission check coming his way. He then presented the contract. We discussed the buyer agency contract, which didn't seem like a big deal since we were genuinely committed to buying. We were aware that most realtors did this, so it didn't raise any alarms. In case you're not familiar, this contract is typically for a 3-month period, stating that you won't buy/rent/lease any property without the realtor receiving their rightful commission. If you pursue a property without involving them, they're entitled to a percentage of the property's purchase price. The crucial detail he omitted, or that we overlooked, this was actually a 1-year contract. Initially, we weren't concerned because we were confident in our intention to purchase a property. Let me tell you, when we informed him of our desired price range, which was approximately $150K lower than our bank-approved amount, he became visibly upset and defensive. He questioned our decision to lower our standards, asked if we had any relatives who might co-sign to help us pay off the house more quickly, and even objected to showing us homes in that particular area. He clearly saw his potential commission fading away. We continued to stay in touch because we felt stuck. We were contractually bound to work exclusively with him for the next year. We sent him links to numerous houses, inquiring about when we could view them. He often took a week or two to respond, and due to his delays, I missed out on a house I considered my dream home. That was the breaking point. I politely asked him if he would release us from the contract, as it was evident that our goals were not aligned. I apologized for my frustration, but explained my reasons. I expressed my feeling that we weren't his priority, and I mentioned that I was considering hiring a private realtor instead. His reply was shocking. "Well, I'll be monitoring your financials for the next year to see if you purchase or lease anything. I suggest you review the contract you signed and consult a lawyer." After that, he ceased communication. I lodged a complaint with the agency, and their response was to try resolving the issue with the realtor directly. When I explained that I had already attempted that, they referred to the contract. I stated my intention to consult a lawyer regarding the contract, and their response was dismissive, essentially wishing me luck. The lawyer informed me that taking on the agency legally could deplete our funds, so we reluctantly decided to wait out the full year, saving a substantial amount of money in the meantime. Finally, the year-long contract expired, and we found our perfect first home, priced higher than our original bank approval, with the most incredible realtors we've ever encountered. On the day of closing at our realtor's office, ironically, the sellers of our new home used the same agency we had escaped from. Our previous realtor watched from the hallway as we finalized the purchase of a house nearly $150K above what we would have purchased through him. This happened exactly 1 month after our contract had ended. He frantically searched for the expired contract, convinced he was about to triumph. I learned through our new realtors, after we left, that there was quite a buzz in the office about the situation. It was satisfying to discover that his superior had told him to leave due to his agitated behavior. Apparently, he had been misusing company time and resources to monitor our financial status on a weekly basis throughout the year, hoping to exploit a quick win via a flawed contract. While there was no direct confrontation between us, I can't help but feel that we emerged victorious. I checked their company website, and his name had been removed from their list of agents. The next one is a petty revenge story. I'm a truck driver, and to say this time of year is stressful is an understatement. Between tight deadlines on loads, customers realizing they need something last minute before the holiday, and added traffic all over the country, it's a nightmare. Yesterday, I went to a customer to pick up a load heading to Iowa so I could drop it for another driver to get home, then grab my load back east so I could get home. I walk onto the dock, and the shipping clerk is sitting in the office with her back to me, browsing Finger Hut. The two other people in the office made direct eye contact with me but didn't indicate to the shipping clerk that I was there. I tried unsuccessfully to get her attention, but she flat out refused to acknowledge my existence. At this point, I realize it's almost noon and they're trying to blow me off and leave me until after lunch. I had been up since 3:30 and was having none of it. I had a long way to go and a short time to get there, so I whip out my phone and look at the app we use to send and receive load info. Usually, along with the customer's address and pickup numbers, there is a phone number for them. I figure I'll just call the shipping office and get their attention that way. My phone starts to ring on my end, but instead of the shipping office, I get the company directory, and the first listing on the directory is the plant manager. Now, if my time in the Army has taught me anything, you get the best results by jumping the chain of command. So I hit hash 69420 for the plant manager and put my phone on speaker. As soon as Finger Hut Fran hears the voicemail for the plant manager, she turns around and starts shrieking. I calmly raise my finger in the just 1 minute sign and proceed to leave a voicemail on the plant manager's line explaining who I was, who I drove for, what load I was supposed to pick up, and finished off by adding that his shipping office personnel were present but too busy online shopping to acknowledge my existence. I thanked him, left my number, and hung up. By now, everyone in the office was staring slack-jawed at me. Finger Hut Fran was beet red and fuming. The other person in the office just tells me to back into a door and they'll get to me soon. I figure at that point my day is shot, and they'll leave me on the dock as long as possible to retaliate. To my surprise, they started on me immediately and had me loaded in less than 20 minutes. When I went to get my paperwork, the plant manager was there having a discussion with Fran, while the other person apologized and told me to have a happy holiday. I get it. Everyone wants this week to be over so they can spend time with their families. But so do I, and that won't happen if you ignore me instead of doing your job. The next one is a malicious compliance story. As I began high school, a new principal took over and decided to overhaul how everything worked. In my freshman year, they eliminated finals. In my sophomore year, they transformed classes into a system with 100% test-based grades, allowing students to retake tests up to 3 times due to rapidly dropping grades. In my junior year, they transitioned all tests to be graded on a 1/5 scale instead of AF, while class grades still followed the AF format. A 5 inches represented a 95% or an A, a 4 inches equated to 85% or a B. A 3 inches stood for 75% or a C, a 2 inches denoted 65% or a D, and a 1 inch indicated 55% or an F. The lowest possible grade was 55%, as 1 inch was the failing grade. During my junior year, my AP physics teacher, who was involved in curriculum changes, believed he was making positive changes for the students. After all, grades were improving, especially for athletes. He played a key role in redesigning the curriculum, though he didn't alter his grading approach significantly. He deliberately crafted challenging tests and applied a flat curve for grading. For letter grades, he considered 70% as an A, 60% as a B, 50% as a C, and so forth. When transitioning to the 1/5 scale, he decided to maintain these percentage thresholds. If you've taken an advanced science class, you're likely aware that lab reports constitute a significant portion of the coursework, often consuming numerous hours, primarily spent on formatting equations in Microsoft Word. Personally, I despised working on lab reports. Thanks to my teacher's new curriculum, lab reports were intertwined with test grades. His solution was to assign lab reports a weight of 10% within the test grade, separately graded on the 1/5 scale. The lowest possible score was a 1, equivalent to 55%. I swiftly realized that even by submitting an empty lab report, I would receive a 55% instead of a 0, contributing 5.5% to my test grade. Achieving 70% for an A seemed more achievable without losing 4.5% of my test grade. Enter MC. For the initial reports of the year, I submitted blank reports. He would assign me a 1 and reprimand me. However, after repeating this a couple of times, he recognized my intentional strategy, considering I was consistently earning A's on his tests. He then mandated that test scores would remain inconclusive until lab reports were turned in, instead of immediately awarding a 1 and moving on. When the subsequent report came around, I simply handed in a paper with my name and lab report typed on it. Reluctantly, he gave me a 1 for the report and an A for the test since I had technically submitted my report. When the following report was due, he announced that reports must include each section. I'm uncertain what he anticipated, but I submitted a page with my name and the titles of each section, without any content beneath them. Once again, I received an A. In the next instance, he declared that every section had to contain at least a paragraph, consisting of 5 sentences, to be deemed complete. In typical MC fashion, I composed 3 concise sentences for each paragraph, along the lines of, "This serves as my introduction paragraph, which must span 3 sentences. This is my 3rd sentence. I earned my A." The final time he adjusted the rules. He proclaimed with a self-satisfied grin while looking in my direction that a 5-page requirement was in place, and the text needed to be relevant to the subject matter. I proceeded to find a wiki article related to the experiment, copied and pasted 5 pages of text, and cited Wikipedia to avoid plagiarism. I secured my A, and he either ceased inventing more rules or realized he wouldn't prevail in the battle. Fallout. The subsequent year, he revamped the entire school's curriculum, introducing an obedience score system to penalize students for incomplete work, even if the work remained ungraded. I have another MC story that involves bending these rules to suit my objectives for anyone interested. The next one is an entitled People Story. Todd had lived in his house for about 10 years before I moved next door. His house was in foreclosure when I arrived, and a year later, he was gone. To say the entire street was relieved is an understatement. There may have been a parade. An investor bought the house for a ridiculous amount and flipped it. The new owner didn't do much to the house after he moved in. He was a great neighbor, and when he passed away, we all missed him. The next current owners moved in and started really renovating the place. When the house was initially flipped, everything they did was simply cosmetic. These houses were built in the 1950s, so a lot of things were seriously outdated. Plumbing had to be redone, electrical had to be redone, the kitchen wasn't remodeled correctly and had to be gutted. These poor people are pouring their blood, sweat, and tears into this house, but they love the house and the neighborhood, so it's all worth it to them. The new family had begun making very obvious changes to the house. First, they took out a planter bed attached to the house and are working towards a more natural landscape. We live in a very desert climate, so keeping grass can be kind of hard on the water bill. The next thing they did was start taking down a humongous palm tree that was literally planted in the middle of their 3-car driveway. Todd initially had a 1-car driveway. He planted the tree and then paved around it to make the driveway bigger. But by now it had grown so big that you could only fit 1 car comfortably, and a 2nd car had to be partially on the yard. Beginning work on that tree brought Todd out from under his rock. From what I understand, Todd had actually moved back to the state about a year or so after he left, and is currently living with his father just a few blocks away. One day he knocked on their door and demanded to know why they were taking down his tree. The wife, let's go with Amanda, was flabbergasted. I had told her Todd's stories here and there, and she said she was simultaneously starstruck and confused as hell. He repeated his demand of knowing why they were cutting down his tree. He said they could not cut that tree down. It's his. He planted it when he first moved in, and he did not give them permission to cut it down. He then asked about the basketball hoop, which was also installed in the driveway. She said that was coming down too. He was angry. His kids played with that hoop. They grew up with it. Why would they take down a perfectly good basketball hoop and a perfectly healthy tree, especially when they didn't have permission? It seems Todd was under the impression that even if the house was no longer his, certain things around the house were. The tree, the basketball hoop, and the blocks from the planter. He didn't want those things, but he fully expected to be asked for his permission before making changes to those things, and he made it clear he would not give it, because they were his, and he wanted them left right where they were. At some point, Amanda's brain kicked in, and Amanda is spiteful as all get out. She gave Todd a few choice words and told him to get off her property, that if he wanted his tree, he could haul it to his own house on the back of his bicycle for all she cared, but it was coming down. And if she saw him on her property again, he was going to meet her 3 dogs, and they loved the taste of trespassers. When the tree came down and before they got the wood hauled off, they set the pile at the corner of the street with a great big sign that said Todd's tree. Amanda says she has not seen him since, and I have yet to see him, so I think all is peaceful in the neighborhood again. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.